Welcome to the Confab Podcast. This is Chris.
And this is Rahul. And today we have a very special guest. Today we have the YouTube content creator, the author of Raspberry Pi Guy. We have Matt himself. Welcome, Matt, to the show.
Guys, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Matt. So this is the Confab Podcast, and let's see what Matt has to tell us today. All right. So, Matt, before we start off, we'd like to thank you for taking your time, through your busy schedule, to come on the Confab Podcast, because what we really want to do here is to get people interested in things that could help them in the future. Some things like creating your own way of doing things, like how you do. You've made your own things, you've made DIY machines and all those kind of things. And so we just want to explore that journey with you.
Cool. Yeah, no worries.
Amazing. Okay, so Matt, before we start, could you tell us a bit about yourself so we can really get an essence of what you were or what you started as?
Okay, yeah. I'm Matt. I'm 21. I'm a computer science student at the University of Edinburgh, and I've done a few things over the last years. People know me from the Raspberry Pi Guy, which is a YouTube channel that I ran. I've run since I was 13, doing tutorials and educational videos about the Raspberry Pi. I'm also the author of a book called Learn Robotics with Raspberry Pi, which takes people through building a basic robot, and all based around the Raspberry Pi as well. And as I said, I'm a student and I'm doing a lot of stuff with robotics nowadays.
Yeah. So Matt has more than 63,000 subscribers already on his YouTube, and he makes a lot of YouTube Raspberry Pi videos, a lot of projects like from skateboard and all the way to troubleshooting a Raspberry Pi. And he also wrote the book called Learn Raspberry Pi with the Raspberry Pi Guy. And it's a pretty lovely book. It's very colorful. A lot of kids and a lot of, especially me, because I like to have colorful things rather than black and white. And it's so easy to understand. And it's like a coloring book for nerds.
I'm glad I like it.
It's amazing
So,
book.
You said you started when you were 13. So I believe a lot of us listeners would be around 15, 16. What would you tell them, like how could they start on a journey of self-discovery, of discovering robotics and electronics in a special way?
Yeah. So I think if you're in, I think there are a few different types of people who are interested in computer science. A lot of the people that you meet have technically inclined parents who maybe, and they've been like programming since they were super young or whatever. Now for me, I discovered computer science and stuff when I was a little bit older, when I was about 13, but it could have easily been a little bit older than that, 15 or whatever. And this can be a little bit overwhelming because computer science is one of those fields that has a lot of jargon and a lot of, can have a high barrier to entry. Not always, but it can. So the best way really, I'd say, is if you decide that maybe, computer science is something that you could be interested in, it's to sort of persevere and dip your toes in the water with something like Raspberry Pi or learning a programming language, for example. And sort of just chip away at things, and you'll quickly find that all of the jargon and stuff like that becomes pretty easy to break down and understand. So I'd certainly say if you're interested in computer science, I'm a big fan of sort of having to think about projects. So have a think of like, oh, it'd be really cool if I did this project, if I made a game, or if I made a robot, or if I made a skateboard or something like that, right? And then it's about learning all of the constituent parts to make that a reality. So it's kind of like not learning for the sake of just learning, but it's learning for the sake of, I want to make something cool. And then you learn all of this stuff on the way.
Amazing.
So Matt was talking about project-based learning rather than going from theory-based, which is a very important step. A lot of students do that today, and it's more of a learning curve. You see, right? If you don't know how to do one, for example, you're working on a skateboard project, and if you don't know how do the wheels work, then you go on YouTube and you search. Okay, fine, this is how it works. So it's a learning curve, and ultimately you make something and you learn something. So project-based learning is a huge thing that is going on. And Matt, I had a question. So, for example, a lot of students want to start robotics from a very small age because they have seen a lot of movies, right? Transformers, Terminator. They're like, okay, fine, I'm building a robot today. So,
Yeah.
how do maybe kids or children at the age of 6 years or 8 years start getting into robotics? Because Raspberry Pi is a very complex tool to work upon, right?
Yeah. So good question. So there are sort of different levels of robotics, I guess. And one of the sort of, I find the most accessible ways of learning about robotics is sort of the stuff that I do in my book, which is sort of to do with having a robot that has two wheels and is sort of based on a platform, and building like a little, essentially remote control car type thing. That can be very simple. And I find that that is something that, kids of all ages and teenagers and a little bit younger can sort of easily understand. Like in my secondary school, we had a robotics club that used like a little two-wheeled robot platform. And we did things like line following and stuff like that, which is very accessible for younger people. So yeah, this two-wheeled robots, they have a big scope for improvements and things. So you can add lots of things. And it's one of the things that I do in the book. It's sort of incrementally improve it. So you go from just building a two-wheeled robot to making it remote control, to making it avoid obstacles, to making it follow lines. And then you can go all the way up to, adding cameras to sort of make it try and understand its environment and things. So yeah, so that's something that has like a lot of scope to it. And you can start very simple and at a younger age. And then as you sort of get more and more advanced, you can do much more with it.
I think the primary thing is just to start, right? Just start off wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just start, and then everything will take care of itself, right?
Yeah, even if that's just playing around with a few motors or whatever. It can be as simple as buying a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino or something like that, or any other microcontroller for that matter, and yeah, just hooking up some motors, or even simpler than that, if you're interested in electronics and sort of the interplay between computer science and electronics, then just buying some LEDs and things like that and making some pretty patterns or whatever, it all serves as a good introduction to the kind of stuff that happens in robotics.
True. And Matt, when you started off with the Raspberry Pi guy, you had a vision, right? And so what would you say? I'm pretty sure everybody's had that obstacle that they had to overcome. So would you like to share with us what that obstacle was, and how you faced it and how you overcame it? Because a YouTube content creator, I know it's not a simple task. I've tried making a YouTube channel, then I failed at it, and then I was just like, let it be there for a while. I'll come back to it later. So how did you persevere and say, okay, I'm gonna go and do this? Get like 67,000 followers.
So I guess there's a lot of luck to it. At the end of the day, there's with YouTube, on the topic of YouTube specifically, when people ask me like, oh, I'd like to make a YouTube channel or whatever, I'd like to do this. I think it's about finding like a niche. Back in the early days of YouTube, gaming was a niche, right? And then you had a few people who started doing gaming, and then they just turned into the largest gaming platforms of people who play games and do stupid things like PewDiePie or whatever, right? Back in 2012, 2013, the Raspberry Pi was a brand new thing. And so I was like, well, I'm interested in this sort of stuff. And they say that the best way of learning some stuff like this is to teach. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll create some tutorials or whatever for the Raspberry Pi, because that was brand new. And so I sort of came into this newfound niche, right? And so did a few people. There are a few people who started like some early blogs and some early YouTube channels and things that just so happened to be there at the right time, the right place. And for me, my motivation was sort of like, as I said, I was getting interested in this sort of area, this area of computer science at that age. This was my first experience with computers properly, right? And I thought that it would be a cool idea to essentially share the progress that I was making. So what I'd do is like, I'd learn how to do something, whatever. It may be as simple as like flashing an LED or using a motor controller or something like that. And then I would make a YouTube video for that. So it was very much charted my progress as I went through my YouTube channel, really.
So what you just said right now, you said, as I was learning, the best way to learn was to teach, and that you'd share whatever it was. So I think there's a big stigma around, not sharing what you have unless you're an expert at it. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that you can learn from Matt, how he made sure, like, even if it was just small things, that people get to know about it, because the more you share, the more you teach others, the easier it is to learn. Because somebody told me once that the time you teach, you're learning it twice, and so you're reinforcing your learning, and so that's just fantastic.
And you quickly sort of become aware, especially when you do exams and things, right, at university or whatever. If one of your friends says, "Oh, can you teach me this?" and then you're like, "Oh yeah, I know that," and then you start teaching, and then you don't know that very well, and you can't explain it very well, so it's very it helps things sort of stick, and I mean, you the stuff that you do, if you're interested in doing stuff online, it doesn't have to be the best of the best. You can put out whatever you're working on, and it can help to motivate people, interest people. It doesn't even necessarily have to be, like this is a regimented tutorial or whatever. It can just be like, oh, this is some stuff I'm working on or whatever.
Right, great.
And Matt, one more thing, I have a question. I mean, you got into Raspberry Pi Foundation as an intern at 2015. Maybe I think you were in high school at that time, right? Can you tell how to get into these big kind of companies? Getting internship is very hard at this very small age.
Yeah. So
what are the tips that you can give?
Yeah. So I there's a little bit of luck in that as well, right? I'm from Cambridge, originally in the UK, right? And it just so happened that Raspberry Pi was founded in Cambridge, and that's where the team was and things, right? And but like there's a bit more to it than just location. I think the key to getting internships and things, and I've been really fortunate to have a lot of opportunities that I've sort of seized upon, right, through internships or things like that. And a lot of it just comes from emailing people and just being a pain, right? Just finding people's email addresses or whatever, and I'm just being like, oh, hi, this is me, this is what I'm doing. I'm just wondering, and especially if you're specific or whatever, people can help you. And so, for example, with Raspberry Pi and like the Raspberry Pi Foundation, it was back in sort of 2014, 2015. I was 14, 15. And it was very much, I was able to email like the founders of Raspberry Pi and be like, oh, this is this body of work that I've been doing based around Raspberry Pi. I'm a big fan. I'd love to meet you guys or whatever. It'd be cool to happy to help you do something. And especially when you're in school or at university or whatever, people love to help other people, and just by emailing and sort of getting your foot in the door, you can get some really cool opportunities that way. And even if they say no, you never know when that opportunity will, an opportunity linked to that may come back in the future. So they may say no, oh, sorry, I'm too busy. But then a few years down the line, they may have set up their own company, or they may be doing something completely different, and they may think about you. And when they have like an internship position going or something like that. But yeah, I'd just say, put your feelers out and just try and annoy people essentially. But don't, annoy people, but
in a good way.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a cold emailing technique that has been used by a lot of people for getting internships.
Nice.
It's always good to have this this personal connection.
Exactly.
You can apply for internships, and certainly when you get to university, these companies will have like portals where you like upload your CV and like this is this is what I'm doing. But it often feels like your CV just goes off into like the abyss, and then you never hear. And a lot of the times you just never even hear back from the company, so you just get ghosted pretty much. Whereas if you're able to form like these personal connections with people, then you can send them an email, just being like, oh, I'm looking to do this or this. I was just wondering if there are any opportunities, and you just stand a better chance, really.
True. Very true. So Matt, I think we can go on to the questions, right, Rahul?
Yeah, we can. I have one question. This was one of the questions that I have seen most of the time on Quotas, is that is robotics a male-dominated field?
True. Very true.
Yeah, a lot
Is
of
it a
people think that
male-dominated field?
yes. A lot of people say that I only see half of the boys working in, or the male candidates working in robotics. I don't see much of female. So what are the views on that, Matt?
So I mean, I don't have any real experience working in robotics in industry. But from my experience, so I'm interning at Amazon Robotics at the moment, and you know, from my sort of academic experience, it's the same as with all computer science, right? Which is that there is an unfortunate sort of divide, and yeah, you're right, it's more male dominated, but I wouldn't say any more so than any other area of computer science. You know, something like 80% to 20% is probably the ratio. But that's something that's changing more and more, and people are doing more and more to change that stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's any different from any other part of computer science. But yeah, I don't really know a huge amount to be able to, you know, tell you the exact breakdowns and things like that. But yeah, I'd say 80-20 is probably my experience.
Matt, just to add on to that question, would you say that, you know, because women in STEM is becoming a really, really big thing, and it's a big movement, and so you could say, right, that women need to get into STEM, because without their ideas, without some of their intellect, we wouldn't be where we are at this moment, would we?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have as diverse a working atmosphere as possible, and that's diversity in gender, diversity in, you know, nationalities, in educational backgrounds, in whatever. You know, it never is generally is never good to have a very you know, homogeneous pool of people, right? If you have people all from the same place, they all have the same experiences, then they're not going to be able to bring their, you know, the different strengths and the different things, and they won't have experienced, you know, a wide range of things that everybody else will have experienced, for example.
True.
So yeah, so any and all diversification is good in my eyes, whether that's gender or nationality or race or whatever.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so whoever you are, wherever you are, you can get into STEM, you can get into robotics, you can get into computer science. There's no limit. There might be social limits, but there is no limit in the eyes of science or in the eyes of the community. So it's just you and your ideas and you moving forward, right?
And every day there are more and more opportunities that come out.
Exactly.
You know, more and more scholarships, more and more activities and things to get involved with. So, you know, there's really is now more than ever something for everybody.
Yep.
Yeah. And one question that I have seen from kids, a lot of them on the internet, is that I started with Lego Mindstorms. How do I get into industrial level robotics? They're like, if I build Lego robots, am I a roboticist? I mean, hint is, that's the question that I asked.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there is this, I guess, this jump from, you know, the type of robots that I talk about in my book, and then like the Mindstorm robots and things, and then industrial / academic robots, like these things that we see from Boston Dynamics and from like the research labs, like at my university at Edinburgh and things. And there is a bit of a big jump, and that big jump is somewhat unavoidable. And that comes from the fact that when you increase to, you know, things like robotic arms and humanoid robots and, you know, things like Spot, you know, the quadruped robot, it gets to the point where you do need to have sort of a relatively strong mathematical background and things in some certain areas of maths. And I mean, I'm by no means an expert, and I'm just finished my second year of my undergraduate degree. And, you know, there's lots and lots of stuff that is ahead of me in terms of the maths and the kind of computer science stuff to learn about. So it is there's definitely a natural progression, but I mean, that's not age dependent, right? If you want to learn about linear algebra and differential equations or whatever, you can do that at any age, and any sufficiently motivated person can do that, right? And there are if you really want to get involved in some of the things, like, for example, robotic arms and humanoids and stuff. Something that I was sort of relatively surprised by with my work in in a robotics lab is that everybody does everything in simulation, right? Even if you have the robots right next to you, you want to run it in a simulator 1 million times first before you run it on the robot, because if you've done something that the robot's not going to like, you don't want it to freak out and get damaged. So and all of these simulators and things, there's this big community online, and all of this stuff is open source software that you can mess around with and play around with yourself, right? And you can learn about all of these things. So you can learn about ROS, which is this robotic, the middleware software, and you can sort of get some experience with that. And as I said, you can have your own robots in a simulator pretty easily at home. You don't need to, drop $100,000 on like a spot robot or something like that. So there's that sort of stuff. There is also, on the more advanced end of the hobbyist stuff, you can make some more advanced robots with some servos and things like that, which people might be interested in. I know, for example, Stanford have released some open source designs for, I think it's called the Stanford Pupper.
There's a reminder for Babov.
That's a quadruped robot that you can build at home for a relatively cheap amount of money.
Great. So just to throw it out there, sorry, Rahul, 1 second. The projects that Matt has worked upon, I believe they're open on GitHub as well, right? The code and the software. Yeah,
most everything that I've worked on that I put on GitHub and share with people. So you can see all my stuff on GitHub.
And that's a mistake that we did. We never ran into simulations. The only thing, even for example, me and Chris went for First Tech Challenge. We should have designed a robot on the software, on CAD, but we didn't do that. True. We literally changed the design maybe more than 5 times. We literally changed the design more than 5 times. I think for every robotics competition, it's always better to go on the online version before you go. I mean, that's one of the biggest mistakes we have done, Chris. You should have done it on.
Well, there are issues when you go from simulation to the real life. When you actually make it, there are certain differences, right? It's never going to be completely the same. But when you're in a simulator, when you're in a sandbox, everything is free. You don't have to spend money. You don't have to be worried about breaking things. You can just press reset, and you can discover things that are not right about your design or whatever. And it's can be super easy. And saves you a lot of time at the end of the day.
Yep. All right, Matt. So we just have 3 questions that we'd like to ask you. So it's part of a tradition that we're doing on the podcast. So is that fine with you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So the first question is, what would you say is the one thing that's defined you? Something that's set you apart from your peers. Allowing you to do these things that you do. And the YouTube and all your interests. What's the one thing that set you apart?
Okay, a deep question.
Yeah.
For me, let me have a think about that. I would say perhaps one of the things that has made me fortunate enough to have some of the opportunities that I've had so far actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier, with sort of making opportunities for yourself by putting yourself out there and things like that. So, if you can build up an online portfolio of your work, right, which I did inadvertently through YouTube. That wasn't my goal when I set out, but it's happened anyway. If you can sort of have a body of work, and then that just strengthens when you apply for opportunities and things like that. So I think that's one of the main differences, I don't know, between me and say a fellow computer science student, is that if I apply for something or something like that, I have since I was 13, I can be like, oh look, I was doing this stuff on YouTube, and that's opened up so many doors for me through companies and through people interested in the work that I've been doing and stuff like that. So I mean, sort of being fearless with approaching people and getting opportunities for yourself, I would say is something that more people should do. You should just not be afraid to send out emails and send out tweets and things like that. And you never know where it leads you.
Very true.
Yeah. So the second question I would like to ask is what is the motivation that drives you to do so?
So there's, I guess, I mean, I'm a computer science student, right? Every computer science student wants to change the world and get very rich at doing so, or something like that, right? I mean, but yeah, no. On a sort of serious level, I mean, I'd love to be able to make a positive impact on people's lives through, and I think that robotics is one of the most exciting areas that has the potential to do that as we're going forwards. So robotics and some of the advanced areas of computer science that we've sort of been seeing over the last few years in the last decade. So yeah, so the opportunities that come through that, whether it's starting a business or doing research or something like that, those are the things that really excite me and really motivate me to do what I'm doing.
Right. So just to throw it out there, both Rahul and I were both computer science students, and we're going I'm going into computer engineering, and he's going into robotics and all those kind of things. And so we totally understand what you're saying right now. All we want to see is something done on this planet that's done by us, but like it's made a positive impact. Even if it's just through computers, it's made a positive impact. That's what drives each and every one of us, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's no better subject, in my opinion, in the world to be doing that with. Just through the virtues of computer science, the stuff that you do on potentially is so easily scalable through things like the internet and stuff. I mean, less so with robotics, I guess, is because it has some physicality to it. But if you're interested in computer science or whatever, you can do something by yourself and have it sent out to everyone in the world pretty much immediately. And the same with sort of things like robotics research and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think there's a better subject and a better area to be doing stuff with.
Great. So we just have one last question, and that is, what would be an advice that you'd give your younger self if you ever got the chance? So, this question is actually meant for those who are a little older, but you're 21, and so we didn't expect that. But so we just want to know if you had a chance to tell your younger self something that could help them along the way, what would that be?
So what I'd tell my younger self, I guess it depends on how young you're going. I think it would have been, if I could speak to my very, very young self, I would have probably tried to encourage them to be, try and give them some computer science opportunities when they're very young. So as I was saying, I sort of only had the opportunity when I was sort of 13 or whatever. But sort of younger, I guess, maybe in secondary school. But the advice that I'd give people that age is I guess already giving a little bit of advice with the whole going for opportunities thing. But yeah, my advice would sort of be, don't be afraid to sort of forge your own path with things that you want to do. If you want to, if you set your eyes on doing something, just don't be dissuaded from it. There's lots of different paths and ways of getting there, and all of which are possible if you really set your mind to it, through education, or as I said, through email blasting and getting opportunities and stuff like that. You can do pretty much whatever you set yourself to, I think it's always good to reaffirm that.
I think one more thing that everybody in our generation especially needs to know is, don't be afraid to talk to people. Even if it's a dumb idea for you, it might be something that's world class and something that can impact the world later on. So it's always good to share, never be afraid. That's what Rahul and I are doing right now. We're actually not even sure about the podcast, but we know that if we can get people on here that are experienced, that are mature, that know what they do, then they've done it in a grand way. They can they can help the generation of today understand, how to move forward, how to stay ahead of the game. So that's what this podcast is meant for. And thank you for sharing. Rahul?
I mean, I have one question. I mean, this is a request from my side. Can you put a day of your life in University of Edinburgh in the robotics lab? Because a lot of people want to see that video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I want to see the robots in University of Edinburgh.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely have a think about that. So the robotics at Edinburgh is I've been super lucky because I applied to Edinburgh and I really liked the computer science course there, but I didn't realize how strong the research is in robotics. There's a very well funded. It's in the School of Informatics. It's general computer science research, and there's a very well funded robotics group that I'm a part of, and it's a complete honor and privilege to be able to be in the same room with some of these guys, PhDs and postdocs and senior researchers and things, working on robotics and stuff like that. So sort of the stuff that I've been doing over the last year, I've been in the lab for about a year, has been primarily around learning the ropes and making some demos and things like that on the robotic platforms and stuff, and contributing in some small ways. But now when I sort of go back to university, I'm hoping to do some of my own research. It's potentially going to lead to, hopefully, who knows, maybe a published paper or something like that. That would be really exciting, or co-author on a paper or something like that. So maybe I'll be able to do a day in the life of
The Raspberry Pi guy.
Yeah, perhaps then.
That'd be great. I hope we could get an exclusive of that.
Like a tour of the robotics lab in the University of Edinburgh.
Confab Podcast exclusive.
Yeah, I can. I did do a promotional video for like my book, which I sort of filmed in the robotics lab. But yeah, no, it's a really cool space, and we got a lot of robots. We got the NASA Valkyrie robot, which is a humanoid robot. The lab is going to be getting some more robots soon. We have the Animal, which is like a quadruped robot, which is a bit like the Boston Dynamics Spot. And then we have 9 bimanual robotic platforms called the Next Stage platform, which is some of the stuff that I work on. So yeah, there's lots of robots, and yeah.
Crazy.
And maybe for you guys, when you sort of start university, I'd recommend, on the topic of sort of emailing people, email your professors. If you see there's something cool going on at your university or whatever, even if it's something for postgraduate students, just email the professors or students or whatever, and just be like, hey, I'm an undergraduate, but I'm interested in this. If you need someone just to run around and get you stuff, I'm happy to help. And you come on the scene, and then you don't know what's next. You can end up helping out, and then become part of something really cool or something like that.
Great. That's great. And just to clear off like a small confusion, if anybody has it, when we talk about labs like this, Rahul and I have seen a few labs, and when we talk about labs and all these equipment, we don't necessarily mean it's clean, right, Matt?
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of here, there, and there. Yeah. All these disassemblies, everything is just
it's
all over the place.
It's not like I mean, there are some areas in computer science where we talk about a research lab, and we do mean that it's like a clean room type lab.
Yeah.
But if you were talking about semiconductor design or whatever, or silicon design, then those are all computer chips are made in clean labs. But yeah, when we're talking about like a research lab or whatever for robotics, they are just a space to do research, to do, they have the robotic platform set up, and usually they have some desks for the postgrad students and things to work at.
Yeah. Chris, what he saw is robotics labs. What Matt is talking about, I mean, University of Edinburgh robotics lab is like a dreamland. It's a dreamland of all robots. I mean, when I'm coming to UK, when I come to UK after get on a airport, I'm going to go to University of Edinburgh robotics lab.
Nice. Well, if you come to Edinburgh, I'll be happy to show you around, and I can show you the robotics lab as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to say to those who are listening before we close?
Do good work. Get a follow your interests, and if robotics is one of them, then best of luck with it. And feel free to reach out if you think I can help you in any small way. I'm by no means a robotics expert, and I'm sort of beginning my journey in robotics in the big world of academia and research and industry and stuff. But yeah, happy to help out any fellow students or anything like that.
Right. And can you tell them how they can reach you?
Yeah, you can tweet at me. I'm at Raspberry Pi Guy 1 on Twitter, or feel free you can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just search my name, Matt Timmons-Brown.
Yeah. So I'll mention all the contact details in the description.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. It was great. For those of you who've seen Matt, he is the YouTube content creator, the Raspberry Pi Guy. He's got a lot of following, and he is just doing what he loves. Nothing else, nothing more, nothing less, just doing what he loves. Thank you so much, Matt. This is Chris.
And this is Rahul signing off till the next time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.